we're not supposed to be knowing a million people. We're not supposed to be looking into 50 people's lives every day. It's not healthy
Definitely not.
because then we're not focusing on our lives. We're comparing it based on what we imagine other people's lives are.
Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
You're in from New York.
Yes.
Love it. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about all things parenting because as we were talking about offline, I'm not yet a parent, but I aspire to one day be. And I feel like all of our problems in adulthood, in a way, stem back to traumas that we experience as children.
100%.
Is that would you say that's an accurate statement?
It's so predictable and ubiquitous. It's almost tragic that all our adult problems or how we deal with them, right? That's what we're talking about. Our emotional capacity to deal with our adult life, that bandwidth is kind of set in childhood. Now, of course, you can become better, you can become more resilient, learn more techniques, but pretty much that foundational imprint is deeply embossed in childhood. And those patterns underlie our relationships ongoingly. And if we want to work out something in the adult present moment, we kind of have to go back to, okay, what were your patterns in childhood? How were you conditioned by your parents? And this is not just relationships, it's all our belief systems around money, success, beauty, achievement, happiness. All of it is imprinted on a very deep level, granular level by our parents in childhood.
I've started to realize that so much of what we believe we deserve from this experience that is life is is imprinted
Yeah.
early on.
100%. And, in a way, it should be easy to just go back to childhood. But the tragic thing is that most of us don't even know that we are imprinted. We think that this is just the way we are. So it takes enormous emotional wreckage, like your relationships falling apart, your career's not going anywhere you wanted, you're not meeting anyone in terms of a relationship, for you to realize that, oh, maybe it's something in my belief systems, it's the way I am that is causing the present moment. But that awareness takes people forever to come to. And then once you come to the awareness, you have to kind of do the inner work to excavate what patterns are deeply embedded within my psyche that I now need to unravel, deconstruct, and create new ones, a new narrative. So that takes a lot of work.
How do we get that awareness?
Well, ideally, we want to get that awareness because we're so smart. Like, oh, of course, right? But nobody gets that awareness just through one's own willingness. Typically, it's through pain, turmoil, chaos, hitting rock bottom. As a therapist, I often wait, not in a perverse way, but I often wait for the client to reach rock bottom because that's when the old patterns from childhood, our ego that we created in childhood, and we can talk about that, falls apart. It's not working anymore. It's like it's just stopped being functional. So now we hit that rock bottom low point in our life because we cannot do what we used to do, but we have not yet created what we can do. So we are at that very low point in the abyss of our lives. But that's when we have a choice to either now come to the resurrection of our souls, so to speak, and do the work, or we kind of just lie there and just, fade away and dissolve into nothingness. So that's the choice point. So we get there through pain. And for some people, it takes a little bit of pain for them to wake up. And for some people, it takes a long time to wake up. And I believe that those who take a long time, it's that length of time is proportionate to the degree with which they created those false selves, that ego pattern from childhood. So the more the pain in childhood, the greater the defense system. Therefore, it takes a lot of pain to break down that defense system because that defense system was created out of a lot of pain. So it's going to take a lot of pain to now shatter it again.
Wow, it's like peeling back the layers of the onion.
Yes.
It's like the more pain, the more layers there are.
Exactly, exactly. And then it takes a lot more pain to now let go of those layers. But doesn't mean that person is living a functional life. They could be addicts. They could just be, disguising their addiction. But they're surviving.
Mm.
But they're not thriving. So in order for us to arrive at a place that is thriving, we want to go back into our childhood, uncover the patterns, see how they've been affecting our lives, and then, choose to keep the ones that we want to keep and then discard and disrupt those that we need to get rid of. Because a lot of stuff from childhood is just baggage, just emotional baggage from our parents' unconsciousness that is really of no utility to us. It's just actually bogging us down.
Mm.
Like it could just be as simple as a belief system around money. And it could be as simple as, you know what? People like me can never be wealthy. That's it. Like something vague, but so insidious and destructive. And we don't even realize it's underpinning our reality and has been holding us down.
Mm.
So, a lot of work that I do with my clients is to take every area of our lives, all the institutions, money, success, happiness, beauty, achievement, and deconstruct all the unconscious belief systems that we have. And actually, in this book, I help the parents do that as well. Because if you don't do it as a parent, you're going to unsuspectingly pass it on to your children. And you don't want to pass down the same toxic messages that we received onto our children. We want to pass down enlightened messages to our children. But parents don't do the work and they don't realize how they pass down toxic messages that are of no utility and, if anything, really destructive to our children.
I mean, it's hard because like you come into this world and your parents, it's not like they have like a guidebook on how to properly
Right.
set up a child for relational success, for financial success. I just became an uncle, and my little brother, I mean, I will tell you, they're winging it. I mean, they're taking classes and they're reading books and
Right,
audiobooks and
right,
podcasts and all
right.
the stuff. But it's like, we don't have a precedent in my family for this.
Right, right. And I've written several books on parenting, but this one is really my tour de force because this is the how to. It's the map. Look, it's called the map because
I love it.
I wanted a map. I needed a map. Every parent wants the manual, but the kids don't come with any. And literally, we're thrown out at sea without an oar, a paddle, a lifeboat, nothing. And we're winging it. And while there is an element of unknown, no matter how prepared you are, you at least want to have a clarity around two main areas. And I talk about it in my book. The two main areas a parent wants to have clarity around are the first one is around one's own childhood patterns. So you want to kind of know, you know what? My mom told me I was stupid and I have issues with my intelligence and I really feel bad. You want to kind of know your issues,
Mm.
or I was really bullied in middle school and they called me fat. Now I have body issues. I have that issue. So you want to kind of know your issues, right?
Yeah.
So that you can try to heal them so that you don't unwittingly pass it on to your children. And the other area which we want to enlighten ourselves on as parents are the messages that culture has given us. Again, messages around, success, beauty, wealth, happiness, belonging, marriage, love, divorce, all these big institutions, religion, so that we can become clear. Do I want to pass this on to my children? Is this a lie? Is this a truth? Because culture has a lot of lies that we just automatically ingest and indoctrinate, internalize without really thinking it through. And you want to think it through before you pass it on to your children. For example, I'm raising a daughter, and as a woman, most women will attest that we grew up with a very stringent, narrow standard of beauty, right? And of course, in
Absolutely. Yeah.
every era, it changes,
Hmm.
from a skinny to a curvy, but it goes back and forth. But there's a standard. And if we don't meet the standard, we feel lesser than.
Mm.
And if we as moms, especially raising daughters, do not deconstruct that standard, and really piece it apart and really, unravel it and take only what's good and dump the rest, we'll pass on that toxic message to our children. And if it's a daughter, they grow up with this poison now. So we don't want to do that. So, as parents, it's our obligation to heal our childhood and to deconstruct culture's insidious lies that they have been passed down through institutions.
Mm. So, how do you protect a child then from those cultural quote unquote lies without becoming like the overbearing parent?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, if your kid goes to school, right? Hopefully, they'll go to some sort of educational place of learning. And the teacher tells them, if you don't get an A grade, you're not going to succeed, something like that. And then the kid comes home and goes, Mom, the teacher said if I don't get an A grade, I'm not going to succeed. Now, if I was fully bought into culture's notion of success, I would tell to my kid, she's right. You
Mm.
better get an A grade. And why didn't you get an A plus? And why is it a 99 and not 100, right? But if I have deconstructed culture's lies around success and I understand very clearly that culture tries to pigeonhole everyone into the A grade box and tells them, if not this, then nothing. And I know that's a lie because success is so multivariant, it's so multidimensional, and the success can be defined in so many different ways. Then I would tell my kid a completely different thing, such as, well, that's what your teacher believes because she was raised in a particular way. But that's not true. You
Mm.
don't have to believe that. I don't believe that. There's another way to look at success. And in this book, I talk about how parents can talk about success to their children, which is, you can connect to who you are in your essence and flourish that. Simple. You
Mm.
don't get a grade. You don't get to be compared to anyone. You have to follow your own inner knowing. That's success. But I can only give that message to my child when and if I have deconstructed that in my own life,
Mm. Well, I love
right?
that because you're also teaching them to challenge authority.
Yes, yes. And to question
Yeah.
and to not take everything at face value and to understand that each one is idiosyncratic and individualistic. So if Matt got an A plus or Max got an A plus and Sam got an A plus doesn't mean Becky, Betha, and whatever, Mary
Yeah.
need to get it, right? They're very different genders, they have different aptitudes, they have different conditionings. So teaching her that and children that each one of us is iconoclastic, each one of us is different, and we have different strengths. Everyone doesn't have to be good at everything. So, again, culture has told us that children should be good at every subject, for example, right? So they go to school, they learn 9 subjects. You're supposed to be good at every one of them. Now, that's total bullshit,
Yeah.
right? I'm not good at everything.
Same.
So when my kid comes home and says, Mom, I'm struggling with math, if I had bought into culture, I'd be like, come on, let's get you a tutor. And now, while I may still say that, but I would have bought into the fact that she should be good at all subjects. And then I would be stressed out and make her stressed out. Now, if I've deconstructed that not everyone can be good at everything, and I'm okay with that, then I'm going to communicate a very different message, such as, yeah, you're struggling. We can get you help, but don't worry. This can be your limitation. We can keep working on it. One day you can overcome it, but if you don't, it's okay. And you have other strengths. Now, when I say this, people don't like this because you're not supposed to have any limitations, apparently,
Mm.
right? But I come from a different point of view. I come from the point of view of knowing your limitations and accepting them and then working on them. And then if you transcend them, great. But you don't have to transcend every limitation, right? What is this burden to be super perfect, super, ambitious people? So I teach parents to teach their children a more realistic view of themselves. It's okay to have some limitations.
Mm.
Accept them about yourself. Celebrate. I'm not that great at that, but I'm great at this. And say it with as much pomp and circumstance as you would the thing you're good at. It's okay to not be good at everything.
Yeah.
It's this false narrative that we have today that we're supposed to be amazing at everything.
Where do you think it comes from?
This super idealistic, naive, immature understanding of human beings.
That
It,
seems pretty common today
yes.
to hold that set of beliefs.
I think it's highly egoic because every parent who says that to their kid is not super amazing at everything, right? But we expect our children to be a little bit of Mother Teresa and a little bit of Julia Roberts and a little bit of Michael Phelps and a little bit of Einstein, a little bit of Mahatma Gandhi. but they're nothing. They're just, barely one thing. So I
Mm.
often tell parents, oh, you want your kid to be in the drama club and the sports club and the varsity team and learn skiing on the weekends and learn braille. Hmm. Like, what do you do, on the weekends? What do you know? Do you know how to do any of these things? They're like, yeah, I kind of do this or I kind of do that, but I dabble. So, it's just this egoic idealization of our children and expecting them to meet this standard that comes from the parents' own inner lack, really. That
Insecurity.
insecurity, that you need your child to be this trophy. You need
Mm.
your child to be this emblem of super achievement so that you can feel good about yourself.
Yeah, I feel like it's increasingly common here in the United States, whereas probably 10, 20, 30 years ago, it would have been more of a cultural there would have been more of a cultural divide, right? There was the phenomenon of like helicopter parenting,
Hmm.
which I think wasn't so common here in the West, but now it's become so.
Oh, it's very common in the West now, especially what I see in my clients in the US. It's the way to parent is you're supposed to be over involved, hyper focused on your kids. They are your identity. Every weekend is spent at their games. And this over hyper obsession with our children is really to their detriment. I mean,
Mm.
it's really toxic.
Do you think social media has anything to do with it?
Well, social media has now created this excessive manic sense that we have to compare and compete with everybody. So it has amped up the parents' idealization of their children that my
Mm.
child needs to be ideal and perfect. Because now we're comparing with other children all across the world and we are getting this filtered, view of other people's lives and we think that that's reality. So if we see a little clip of a gymnast who's 3 years old, then we go home and we yell at our 9-year-old, why didn't you learn gymnastics? You should be more active. And then we see a little clip of something else and we want it all, and I think that comes from the parents' own inner instability,
Mm.
inner chaos, inner unworthiness. So they act out through their children.
Mm. Yeah, it's a big problem. I was looking at your Instagram and there was a video that you had done recently on. Um, you were urging people not to make everything so public,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like it's like a thing today where it's like you might as well not do anything unless you can post about it on social media.
Right. Or before we do anything, we have to take a picture. So there's this, everybody knows that people now believe, they truly believe that you're supposed to post every update in your life on social media. And it's a compulsion. Once you start, you got to kind of now do it all, right? Now, how do you miss out a few days? And people feel that compulsion and then they get attached to the responses they get and the reaction they get. And then that becomes your dopamine hit.
Mm.
How many likes, how many comments, you're constantly checking, constantly, seeing if you're getting enough likes and hits on your clicks on your videos. And then that becomes its own relationship, which is all based on strangers, based in kind of virtual reality. And what that does with when you focus on that, what that means is you're not focusing on other things such as the present moment, such as your relationships, your connections, your inner life. And you're just completely disconnected from who you are here in your connection and with your present day relationships. And that becomes your obsession.
Mm.
And it's really dangerous. I mean, we're seeing with teenagers, especially young girls, that they are caught up in this comparison game and self hating, self loathing, and self harming has reached an all time high in teen girls. And in teen boys, there's increased isolation. They're sitting in their rooms and gaming, increased violence. Kids are dating less, kids are seeing each other less in person because now they can just sit at home and just FaceTime, right?
Mm.
So the need to go meet in person and have real time, real talk connections is fading. And that's really, really sad.
It's a huge problem. I mean, when I was growing up in elementary school, I the internet came about probably when I was in like 6th grade or so. Maybe a little bit. No, I think it was around that, maybe a little bit after. But, in high school and earlier, I had all the insecurities that a kid has, right?
Right.
I can't, and part of it has to do with, I think, the fact that like this mismatch has to do with the fact that our brains evolved when all they had to do was focus on what was going on around us, right?
Right.
Like we lived in a world that was much more localized.
Yes.
And today, like your average child has or adolescent has all those same insecurities, but it's now magnified because they are now part of this like global marketplace. And it's not
Absolutely.
just a global marketplace, it's a global marketplace with filters and
Hmm.
AI technology that makes
Yeah.
people look like these hyper unrealistic like
Yes.
versions of themselves. I can't even
Yes.
imagine like
Right.
what that does to the psyche
Yes.
of a
Our
young
poor
person.
teenagers who grow up in that world, because at least we had a healthy dose of another kind of reality. But our teens today or young children are growing up in this artificial world where everyone looks like, some caricature out of a comic book. And they begin to think that that's real life.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they're getting filtered realities of just slight, the sliver of a population. It's not everybody, but you begin to believe it's everybody.
Yeah. I go to the explore page sometimes on my Instagram.
Yeah.
It's a bad habit. I know I shouldn't be doing it, but it's like watching a train wreck. Like
Mm.
it's hyper realized women that are posing
Yes.
and showing off parts of themselves for
Yes.
clicks. It's guys with physiques that are completely unnatural
Yeah.
that I could never get without injecting myself,
Right.
full of anabolic
Right.
drugs. And then I get a lot of like, for some reason, like people with like weird deformities and stuff because people click on them on social media, like
Wow.
weird congenital.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't want to be seeing any of this.
Right. But it's all a voyeuristic culture now where we're just voyeuristically looking into people's lives and not living our own lives. And the reason I posted that on social media that, just reminding people like, hey, there was a time that we didn't post stuff on social media. We didn't make everything private, public. We kept things to ourselves. And there was beauty in that. And the beauty in that is that you rely on yourself for your own validation.
Mm,
And when we post everything on a public space, what begins to happen to our psyche is that we drive ourselves to need and depend on the validation of others. And that's the danger. And these are others who are strangers, who have nothing to do with your life, don't have any, resonance with you necessarily, but they're commenting on your lives and they're
mm,
kind of snarky, they're kind of bullying and they're rude and they're disrespectful. And then your self esteem gets impinged upon because you gave them your power.
yeah,
So, we're not supposed to be knowing a million people. We're not supposed to be looking into 50 people's lives every day. It's not healthy
definitely not.
because then we're not focusing on our lives. We're comparing it based on what we imagine other people's lives are.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine like me as a 15-year-old kid on social media. Like if I had social media at the time, I would have just been like the biggest dick.
Yeah, well, we're raising generations of that now.
It's
So,
crazy. Okay. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that parents make today?
oh my goodness, and the countless mistakes. But I think, to be fair, parenting is the most difficult job in the world, and no one does it right. It's not meant to be done right. You cannot do it right, and the reason for that is it's humans raising humans. So the degree of imperfection is just expounded. So it's not about perfection. But I would say the biggest mistake is that we don't do the inner work on ourselves to understand how our own childhood impacts our parenting. And we negate that, we deny that, we ignore that. And we then mistakenly or unwittingly project all our expectations, fantasies, and needs onto our children. And we raise them as if they're little puppets and expect them to follow our ways. And
Mm,
that's the deadly mistake of parenting because then the child suffocates under our pressure and is never allowed to flounder and fumble to find their own sense of self. They are, you know, succumbing to what we expect them to be.
mm,
And that's why we are a generation after generation of adults then who are lost to themselves, who don't understand who they are, because in childhood they were never given the opportunity to find out who they were and then celebrate and honor that.
mm,
The parents, make them who we want them to be.
mm.
And in that, there's a great inner disconnect. And all addictions arise from inner disconnection.
It's so true. I mean, in a perfect world, and there's no such thing as a perfect world, but people would have the opportunity to do the self work
Yes.
prior to them becoming parents. But I feel like that's not really how it tends to happen.
Well, at least the awareness that you are going to have to do the work.
Hmm.
You may wait till you have a kid, but that's what my book is all about. It's telling the parent that before you even try to raise the child before you, make sure you're also raising yourself. You are the first child you need to raise. Your inner child is out of control, it's damaged, it's hurt, it's wounded. You need to heal yourself before you can understand and heal and grow your child.
Would you say therapy is a really important tool?
Well, therapy, courses, meditation, so important because when you're about to lose your shit, you need to have some tools, some mantras or chants or so mindfulness is the most important tool, I would say.
Hmm.
The technique of meditation is by far the most important tool you need. But yes, then to talk to a coach, a therapist, do courses. For example, I have tons of courses on parenting. Why? Because parents need the resources. We are thrown into the parenting process without a license. There's no degree, there's no prerequisite, there's not even like a test for your sanity. Like anyone can become a parent. That's really scary.
It is scary.
Yeah. There's no regulation, there's no board to supervise or to oversee. And this is the most sacred and difficult job in the world.
Hmm.
And it's just unfathomable to me that we have not created some sort of litmus test, some sort of screening to see whether the person is ready, able, and capable of being a parent. I know this is so it sounds like I'm taking away people's innate human god-given right, but you got to have some degree of sanity, and then you need to have some degree of like integrity and some psychological wherewithal before you raise a child. I mean, I had done a PhD, several masters, and I was doing a terrible job,
Hmm.
because I didn't know until I knew. So at least put every parent through some courses, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, a devil's advocate might say that, like, look, we've made it here after what 200,000 years of being anatomically modern humans.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
there is some degree of figuring it out that
Hmm.
your average person, average, right? That your
Right.
average person is capable of.
Well, but if you also think about it, that only if you just take the last, 75,000 years or 30,000 years, we have been slowly destructing. So in the last 10,000 years, just take the last 10,000 years, since the advent of the agricultural revolution, it's been a steady decline in our health. Mental illness has risen. And now just in the last, 30 years, look at the destruction we've done to our planet.
Mm.
So yeah, we are making it, because we've evolved to kind of survive. But are we truly evolving? Are we really optimizing our existence, or are we just kind of destroying everything around us?
Yeah. Also, I found this out recently, but that suicide is the second most
Yeah.
common cause of death
Yes.
for people ages, I believe, 15 to 35.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. This is a modern trend,
Mm.
and it comes from I give the cause this influx of virtual reality, not living in our present moment, comparing ourselves constantly, seeing other people's lives and believing that ours is not good enough, this FOMO mentality, the bullying that goes on, the cyberbullying, the trolling, all of this. Life was hard enough as it was for you and me when we went to high school. Imagine that plus all the sharing on social media that happens and all the bullying that happens because of that. It's just our kids are suffering.
It is a real problem. Meditation and mindfulness, you mentioned, that checks out with my experience, and I'm not a frequent meditator by any means, but is there a specific mindfulness or meditation technique that you like to practice or endorse?
Well, I practice vipassana meditation, which is really hardcore. Just breathing, and that's it. No chanting, no scriptures, no beads or anything. But people can do different kinds. They can start with just 5 minutes a day, listening to Oprah and Deepak Chopra. They have beautiful meditations. I do free meditations, I have them on YouTube. You can just start with a free 5 minute, sit on the mat, sit on the cushion, and just center yourself in the present moment on your breath. And you'll find that in few seconds, nanoseconds, your attention will disappear. And you keep trying and you keep trying. And just that practice of being aware of how distracted you are and what it takes to come back to the breath, that muscle of coming back to the breath is the one that will help you when your kid triggers you and you're about to react and you're about to lose your shit.
Wow, I just got goosebumps. The the what meditation does is in those difficult moments, it allows you the space to have awareness, and then the I guess it gives you the agency to then be able to pivot your attention back onto back onto your breath.
Yes, yes. And the breath is the constant in the present moment. The breath is never not in the present moment. If you breathe right now, you can only breathe in the present moment.
Mm,
And the next breath is in the present moment. So, by focusing on the elegance and the eloquence of just your breath, brings you back into the present moment like nothing else. And your breath is always changing yet constant. So again, it's another principle of life. Like life is constantly changing. So it's teaching you to live in the present moment as it is changing.
mm.
So, new breath, new breath. So it teaches you to kind of keep in the flow, but also be very grounded in your body. The minute you start breathing, you're back in your body. You're not in your ego, you're not in the future, you're not in the past, you're right here in your body. And that is a grounding practice. It's a present moment practice. And then you are able to connect to what's happening right before you in a very presence filled way than if you were not meditating. If you're not meditating, you're just spouting reactions, you're just in your mind, in your ego, in the past, in the future, and you're missing the moment. It is the most powerful technique of your life. It's not a belief system, it's a technique. People sometimes go, "Oh, that sounds too woo-woo and sounds too Eastern, and I can't do it because I'm Catholic." I say to them, or Jewish or whatever. I go, this is nothing, this is not a religion. This is not a Hindu religion. It's not a Buddhist religion. It's a technique.
Mm.
It is simply a practice. And it is the most powerful practice, hands down.
And it's validated by science, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
100%.
how does breathing change your biology? It's almost like an antidote to the fight or flight response if
Well,
you do it a certain way, right?
right. So, I'm no neuroscientist or endocrinologist to tell you about how blood levels and cortisol levels change, but just the act of creating that pause between stimulus and response, right? Our brains are constantly firing responses to our stimulus. Just by creating a pause, you're slowing down your entire chemical endocrinological system, and you are calming the cortisol levels, right? You don't have to react. You're pausing. Like right now, if we just stayed quiet for a second, look how beautiful that sound is of
Mm,
silence, right?
mm,
You immediately can just lean into it and calm down and not need to fill it up with a reaction, a noise, an impulse. And you begin to slow down your life and take pauses, restful breaths that allow you to recenter yourself, to bring all that energy back into the present moment, back in your body. So if you're clenching your jaw, you can unclench it. If your palpitations are running high in your chest, you can calm it down. So you're constantly reducing the stress levels in your body. Just by that, your entire biochemistry changes and you begin to slow down. A lot of our overeating, over addictions occur because we're not present, not slow, not taking pauses. And we're constantly reacting out of this frenetic, anxious place.
mm. It's so true. A lot of people struggling with whether it's weight or other health issues, trying to make dietary change, for example, a lot of people will try to like revamp their kitchens, right?
Yeah.
But I think what often happens is that people like adopt this sort of black and white mentality about what they should and shouldn't be eating, and they strive towards perfectionism, which we know is an impossible ideal, and they neglect oftentimes the mindset aspect that really should serve as the foundation, right?
Yes.
That makes all
Yes.
of those other changes possible.
Oh my goodness. It's all connected to the body and the mind body connection. And in my book, The Parenting Map, the first stage is all about changing the mindset. So, just like you just said, if we don't change the mindset and the foundational principles that underlie our belief systems, no matter if we have the best looking fridge or kitchen, we're still going to be of the same old mindset, which is going to drive us to the same dysfunctional patterns. So, mindset, even in parenting, has to be the first step that you begin to create change within. And believe it or not, parenting has such toxic mindsets and belief systems that we need to debunk from the traditional to become a parenting, to become a parent of the most conscious state that you can be.
Mm,
So a lot of the traditional parenting belief systems are filled with lies and negativity that create great dysfunctionality between parent and child. And in my book, I talk about how we can make the movement from those old paradigms, those old parenting belief systems, to brand new conscious belief systems.
mm. As an adult child of a dysfunctional um, parenting map, so to speak, is there any hope, like
Of
to
course.
fix those patterns that sometimes seem almost as if they're hardwired?
Well, they are, but again, nothing is permanent. So we are dynamic beings. And yes, they are imprinted, but you can recreate new patterns and rewire yourself in completely new ways. So as an adult, you absolutely can heal your patterns, disrupt them, and create new narratives and stories that can allow you to design a whole new life. It is 100% possible all the way till you're in your 80s.
Mm,
But the only thing you need, and the only thing is the most important and very difficult thing indeed, is the commitment and the declaration to your healing. People who are on the self growth path are really diligent about it. They are devoted to it. Like I'm devoted to my self growth. I am not going to take it lightly. No relationship is more important to me than my relationship to myself. And I can say that blatantly, even though I'm a mom, and it may sound like a selfish thing to say. The reason I can say that is because I know if my relationship to myself is effed up and screwed, then my relationship with my child will be dysfunctional.
mm,
So, conscious parenting teaches parents to create the most clear, coherent, and empowered relationship with oneself, because from that relationship, your relationship with your children will blossom. If you don't have a strong relationship with yourself, if you're not whole within yourself, if you're not healing within yourself, if you're not aware of yourself, if you're disconnected to your own body in the present moment, you will not 100% not connect to who it is your children are in their essence. You will impose your own egoic agendas and expectations, and you will treat them as if they are a version of yourself.
mm. Yeah, and you start to take out like your insecurities and all the
100%.
cobwebs that you're allowing to accumulate.
And you simply dismiss your children.
Mm,
The other day I was with a mother and her daughter, and the daughter was trying to tell the mother how she was hurt. And the mother would completely not listen to her, was just refusing to acknowledge her point of view. So I had to stop the mother and ask her to take some breaths and calm down. And then I asked her, I said, is it more important to you to hold on to your belief systems from your childhood and
mm.
your culture? Or is it more important for you to connect with what your daughter is feeling? And she couldn't answer that. because
Wow.
she was caught between her own egoic attachments to her belief system. They were so important to her that they overrode her capacity, readiness, and willingness to listen and adhere to her child's point of view.
It reminds me of the show that they made about Jeffrey Dahmer. Have you seen that
Not yet.
on Netflix? It's incredible. It's one of the greatest things I've seen in like almost forever. Like it's
Mm,
like definitely one of the highest quality shows I've ever seen. One of the reasons why I think it's so good is that it portrays the story of Jeffrey Dahmer and all of its complexity. You know, it's a very complex story, but what you were just saying reminded me of a very subtle but incredibly important scene in that show where Jeffrey is talking to his father, and it feels like, and his father has like a new girlfriend, and they're at a diner together, the three of them, and Jeffrey's sitting across from his father and the new girlfriend, and it seems like it's almost the first time you really get to see Jeff connecting, or at least attempting to connect
mhm,
to his father.
mhm,
But his dad just has all these hopes for
mhm,
Jeff that he's just has seen crumble, right? Like
mhm,
that he's such a failure and that he's such a mess up. And he's thinking about where Jeffrey could potentially go to college. And Jeffrey, for the first time, attempts to open up to his father about these weird sexual feelings that he's been having. And his dad just immediately changes the subject. And it's such a cringe moment
mm,
from the standpoint of the audience because you see
mm,
like all this pain that's about to be
mhm,
released, you
mhm,
know, and given oxygen.
mhm, mhm.
And the father is just like he's so consumed by his own shit, whether it's his new
Right,
girlfriend or the
right,
hopes that he has, like the
right,
life that he envisions
right.
for his son. And it just obviously we know how the rest
Right.
how it
But I
goes,
don't
but
want parents to feel nervous
that
that
they're gonna
if they mess up,
have a serial killer
then
on
they're
their
going to
hands.
have a serial killer on their hands. Because not every kid, and all of us have had moments in our childhood where our parents couldn't see us. They didn't meet us where we were. They totally bowled us around and, rolled over us and our will and didn't pay attention to ourselves. It's okay. Parents are going to make huge mistakes. I don't want parents to feel as if they are responsible for their kid if their kid is, in any sort of way a criminal or a loser in any way. Parents have a huge influence, but we're not the only influence. There's also genetics. There's also so many other cultural factors that our children can be exposed to and fall prey to that can really ruin their self-esteem more than us. So we shouldn't take 100% responsibility for how our children turn out. We just need to take responsibility for how we turn out.
Mm,
So this is nothing to do with our children. Parents will often come to me and say, okay, if I read all your books and I take all your courses, will my child be super successful? Will my child be super happy then? And I always say, this is not about your child because we can't control the outcome of your child. They have their own destiny, their own cultural influences that they will collide with, that will have an interaction on them. We don't know how that will come out. We can't take responsibility for everything. We need to take responsibility for ourselves. This is about, am I showing up in the most profoundly impactful, presence filled way that I can? Am I truly here to be there for my child, to listen to my child, to support them, to really be their greatest ally? Am I doing a good enough job in my body right now where I'm not distracted by my own ego, my own expectations? Am I truly trying to connect to my child's essence? This is all about us. That's what my book, The Parenting Map, teaches parents is that this is about you. You need to raise yourself into the highest state of consciousness that you can. And then, that's the best you can do. But do that
mm,
because that's where you have power.
mm. Are there any things that parents can do to facilitate their children's emotional development?
Sure. One of the hardest things parents have is tolerating and holding space for their children's big feelings because children have big feelings all the time, or most of the time. And it's a lot. Children have big feelings most of the time, and it's really a lot for really many parents to handle.
Mm,
I had a hard time when my daughter would have. Sometimes there were days when she would have 3 or 4 tantrums a day. So it takes a toll on the parent. But one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is the capacity to hold space and tolerate those feelings and allow those feelings to exist without tampering into them or interfering with them or micromanaging them. Because children's feelings, they literally come and they go. But because we get so anxious as they are coming, they come like waves after waves, and we don't realize that they will go on their own. But because we get so anxious, we try to stop it, suppress them, yell at them, punish them, tell them, don't be a crybaby, wipe those tears, be happy. And when we do that, we suppress our children's innate, organic way of expressing. And more than that, we teach them that their feelings are scary, that they should be threatened by their feelings.
Mm.
So now they don't have the resources to deal with their own feelings as well. So here we've raised another generation of individuals who are uncomfortable with their feelings. And when you're uncomfortable with your feelings, anytime you're uncomfortable, you're going to look for a surrogate or a distraction or a proxy. And that's why people eat too much, drink too much, distract themselves on social media, because they are unable to tolerate and sit with the uncomfortable feelings.
Mm. What does it mean to hold space for somebody? Because it's a concept that I think I get.
Yeah.
Certainly, my more hippie like friends use it. It's a term that I feel like comes up all the time in conversation. But like, what does it actually mean in
It just,
practice?
at a very simplistic level, means to bear witness. You're not here to fix, you're not the boss of anyone, you're not here to hyper control, you're not here to rescue. Just hold the space, which means just bear witness with respect and just be present to the person as they're going through their feelings. This has nothing to do with you. You don't have to change it. You don't have to do anything. Just basically, if you could speak, you would say things like, I see you.
Mm.
I hear you. I can see that this is difficult. I'm hearing that you're in pain. I understand what you're saying. I get it. Try to relate and try to have empathy, or just simply repeat back. What I hear you saying is that I've hurt you, and can you tell me more? It's so hard to do because it creates anxiety in us. And if they're yelling at us, if our children are yelling at us, it is so hard to hold space
Mm.
because we get so defensive. We just want to like smash them, like, no.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes like we get caught up into thinking that what they're asking for is our advice,
Yes,
right? But
yes,
that's not. That's
right.
generally not the. That's usually not the case, right?
Most usually not the case. And my daughter's 20, and I typically know right away she's not asking for advice. But I'll even ask her, like, what would you like me to say? Would you like me to just, listen to you and, reflect back to you what I hear? Or would you like my opinion? And she's always telling me, just listen, right? Because they want to figure it out on their own. And actually, only they can figure it out for themselves, especially after a certain age. But we want to teach our children, even from a young age, what do you think? What would you do? What would you tell me to do if I asked you this question? Let's brainstorm together, because you don't want to give the ready made answer right away, because you want your children to develop the faculty of sitting with those uncomfortable feelings and then digging deep to find the answer.
Mm.
So many times, for example, children ask their parents, what do I eat? Right? And we quickly give them choices. And I often tell parents, don't give them the choice. Let their stomach talk to them. They'll figure it out if they're hungry. And my daughter used to get so annoyed with me. Just tell me. I was like, I don't need to tell you, because you know what is available. We can go to the market and buy every fruit or vegetable and cook anything. So your body needs to talk to you. And what I was saying to her really is, stop looking to me for every quick fix. Do the deep work. Be hungry a little bit. Ask your body, what does it need? I'm not your psychic. I'm not your, brain. You have your own brain.
Mm.
And even though it was so easy for me to give the answer, I wanted her to struggle a little bit. And then after 10 minutes, if I saw that she did a little bit of struggle, I may suggest. And but it's not really being passive aggressive in withholding. It's trusting that the child knows its own body best,
Mm.
right? Now, parents will say to me, oh, my child wants to eat 14 cookies. They think they know best. Are you saying, Dr. Shefali, that I should let them eat 14 cookies? And No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if they say they want to eat 14 cookies, what we need to say to them is not, are you crazy? No way. No, we need to say to them, wow, your tummy really likes the sugar, doesn't it? All tummies love sugar, and sugar is addictive. So, as your parent, sugar is not, I have to tell you that sugar is not healthy for you. You know, you can eat one today and one in 5 days. And let's make a calendar when you can eat all 14. I'll make a plan with you, but it just can't all be now.
Mm.
So, in that way, you validate them. You trust that, yeah, they're right. They want to eat 14 cookies. They're smart. It tastes good. They're not wrong. But then we need to come in to create the conditions and, temper it.
I love that. Is there a difference in the way that we treat the emotions of girls versus boys? Because I remember, so I had somebody on the podcast. I don't remember who it was, but said that we tend to, like, when we're asking our, our daughters how their day went, we tend to use more emotional centric language, like, how did you feel today? Whereas with our boys, it's like,
What
what
did you
did you
do?
do today?
Right,
Yeah. And
right,
so it kind of, in a way, handicaps
right,
boys
right.
who will ultimately become men, and doesn't really give them the kind of emotional vocabulary that women sometimes are better able to develop.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a predisposition which is biased toward feelings for girls, and for boys it's more about achievement and activity, and yeah, it disables boys to a certain degree when we do not allow them to have the same bandwidth that we have with girls to cry, to share their feelings. Or, we'll tell them, don't be a girl, you're not a girl,
Yeah,
don't be a
boys don't cry.
Right, right. And that's a real disabling element. But I think we're becoming better at that. And I think actually sometimes a new age parent may go too far, as in that if the boy is kind of being a boy, like being rowdy and, and again, I'm being stereotypical, but, boys tend to be more active. They're more muscular. They're more in their movement, in their
Aggressive.
aggressive. They're more in their body. They just, that's how boys are wired. We will go so far as to tell them, hey, don't do that,
Mm,
and that's also not okay, right? If boys need to move more than a typical girl, we need to let them.
mm.
And I think we are at a war against boys in some sense, because we're labeling them ADHD. We're punishing them for not being able to sit in their chairs. But most boys, young boys especially, really are way more active just in how they're wired. Call it testosterone, call it their biochemistry. They have different hormonal levels of everything than we do, completely different than we girls do. So, not honoring that is also to dismiss them. So, on one hand, we don't let them cry. On the other hand, we're not letting them, quote unquote, be boys.
Yeah.
So, boys are growing up a little bit confused.
Also, we live in a culture that has, in many ways, demonized masculinity.
Yeah.
Right?
And
We hear the concept of toxic masculinity.
well, there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, but there's also such a thing as beautiful, healthy masculinity. And there is such a thing in my book, I talk about it, one of my other books, toxic femininity. Who said there isn't toxic femininity, right? Anything can become toxic if it's adverse and extreme. But there's beautiful masculinity, and women are also capable of having a masculine side, just as men are capable of having a feminine side. But we need to also embrace the beautiful parts of masculinity. And I feel bad when I hear the word toxic masculinity, because I've used it too, but I use it for only the toxic parts, not all of masculinity.
No.
Masculinity is assertive, it's clear, it's linear, it's boundaried, compartmentalized. These can be beautiful, healthy parts of you. It becomes toxic when it is in an extreme form, when assertiveness becomes aggression, when boundaries become domination, when compartmentalization becomes separation.
Mm,
That's the continuum, but it's on a continuum.
What is toxic femininity?
Toxic femininity is when, so the beautiful parts of our feminine nature are our giving, our receiving, right? We have this vagina that opens up. Biologically, we know how to receive. Our psychologies can receive. We are more pliable because of our ability to give birth, right? Our body from one becomes two. We know how to be flexible. We expand. We are caretakers. We are nurturers. Our breasts can lactate. We give birth. We can sustain life. What an amazing thing it is to have the feminine principle. But toxic femininity is when caregiving goes to such an extreme, when caretaking for the other means sacrificing the self.
Mm.
When our nurturing of the other comes at the cost of self respect, right? When we abnegate the self, when we go to such a degree that we absolutely vaporize our own sense of self for the other.
Mm.
We've become so extreme in our giving that we have actually lost any connection to our sense of self.
Mm. Is there a social aspect to it as well? Like, I've sometimes heard it, and I'm by no means an expert in this topic, but used to refer to on social media the way that certain, like, for example, female influencers will garner huge followings by exploiting parts of themselves. Is that sort of part of that constellation, or is that something different?
Are you talking about when women go so far as to actually expose themselves so much? And is that
Yeah,
what you're talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. Like garnering followings by like showing these hyper idealized versions of themselves. Um,
Hypersexualized versions of themselves?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I
Exploiting in men the fact that men are visual. We
right,
can't
right.
help ourselves but to click onto
Correct,
these
correct.
images when they appear on our
Right.
explore pages.
Right. There's this funny aspect, when I say funny as in ironic side to this feminism where we actually we show off all parts of our body because we are being feminists. We're taking charge of our body. And if we want to expose our body, we damn well will. That's amazing. But actually, we don't realize how that is actually playing right into what men want
Mm.
from us, right? Men want to see us naked and want to objectify us. So we're allowing them to. And then we complain that men are objectifying us, but we are
Yeah,
playing right into it, right?
right.
Right. So females need to be very aware of what they're doing. We're not exactly clear of as to how we want to be empowered, and sometimes we think we're being empowered, but actually we're in the long run disempowering ourselves, and all of us, we're disempowering our sisters because we're actually so objectifying ourselves,
Mm.
right? We're doing all this surgery, we're trying to look so beautiful and perfect. For whom? For whom? Right? Women will say for ourselves, but really, are we really mutilating our bodies for ourselves? We're obviously doing it for external gratification. And in that, we don't realize that we're actually playing into the hands of the males that we say subjugate us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's a tragic, extreme form of some sort of need for validation that we all are in the grips of, and we have to pay attention to. I have compassion for women who, because I can fall prey into it myself, where culturally we are so driven now to want attention for our physical external form that when we don't perfect our bodies, we feel lesser than. And that's why you're seeing droves of women today perfecting their bodies. I mean, from the earlobe to the toes, to the creases behind their knees, all for what, right?
Even genitalia
Even
now. People are
genitalia, right,
seeking cosmetic
right,
surgeries when
right.
I know somebody that actually did this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So we females, I mean, our jaws, our cheekbones, our nose, our lips, our eyelashes, our eyebrows, every part of us is under siege to become perfect. And why are we trying to become perfect? Because we want the attention that we feel we deserve. And it's really sad because the only attention that will ever, ever matter is our own self attention. And the more we try to perfect ourselves and not live with our imperfections, they're not even imperfections, really, just our normal bodies, right? There's no, we barely see normal bodies. I barely see normal lips anymore. I barely see normal faces anymore, right? And I often ask the males in my life, do you know that those lips are injected? And they're like, no, really? Because we women know, right? We know that most of anyway, but I have compassion because it's coming from an inner neediness to get attention and validation. And I want it too. Like I want to go inject my lips too. They look amazing when I imagine they would, right? So I have to stop myself because I have to deconstruct, okay, Why do you want to change your lips? Oh, because they look so nice. Why do you want them to look so nice or better than they look? Oh, because I don't know, I'll get more followers. I don't know, right? But women are driven by a need to get something. And I have compassion for that.
Yeah, but I don't think it's inherently toxic. It's about when you start to develop an adverse relationship, and like, your intentions for all these changes become essentially toxic. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with, seeking to improve your appearance, so long as you are doing it for you, and that it's not really um for external validation, you know?
Well, I think there's a fine line, and I think you're right. There is nothing wrong. And first, we have to have an approach of compassion. That's why I've been saying the word compassion,
Mhm.
because it's coming from a need, whatever that need is, right?
Yeah.
It's not coming from an evil place. It's coming from a real inner need, and we have to value that. We have to honor that. So we just have to kind of draw the line somewhere between doing things to improve our self-image. I want to do it too. Every woman wants to the point of destroying ourselves or being enslaved by an endless quest for endless perfection,
Right.
because there is no end. And I always tell women, of course, do this or do that, but at some point, you're ultimately going to have to do the hard work, which is you are aging, and that's okay. And you are going to have parts of yourself that are not going to be the pinnacle of perfection. And that's okay. The hard work is to accept that. We cannot bypass the hard work. Every woman and man wants to look amazing, but that does not bypass the real hard work, which is we have to accept ourselves for just how we are. And that's got value too. With today's science and technology, we can keep bypassing that, and just get the better toes or get the better lips or get the better hair. Sure. But you ultimately will have to confront yourself in the mirror one day,
Yeah.
because you are growing older. I'm growing older. You're growing older. Every 20-year-old is going to be 30. So we have to embrace that at some point to some degree. And somewhere say, at this point, I'm going to draw the line because I'm going to have to be okay with myself. And I need that. I want that message to be out there for women, especially young women. You don't have to look perfect from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. There can be parts of you that can just be parts of a body.
Mm.
They are not statues that you have to show in a museum. You don't have to showcase everything. You don't need 1,000 compliments about every part of your body. It's okay to have parts of your body that you can just say, you know, it's just my body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. Look at guys. Guys walk around looking just, you know, you're not getting ready with makeup and jewelry every day.
No, but I do, I mean, I love fitness, and I would be lying if I said that part of what I love about it, like that, if I said that I didn't love the fact that there was an aesthetic, of somebody who's fit that appealed to me and that I aspired to embody.
Yes, yes. And again, that is normal. That's human. But to what end and to
Right.
what extent will you go to get that body?
Yeah.
Right? So we just have to, I see many mothers, for example, who've just given birth and they'll come to me as a client and they're beating themselves down because their body is flabby or out of shape. And I always say to them, but you just gave birth. You just did the most amazing, magnificent thing. But they don't care. They're
Mm.
hard on themselves because culture has put this, and because of social media more so, this unattainable, unrealistic ideal of that, what you said, hyper realized, hypersexualized body that we feel we should get. And I think it's burdensome for women
Definitely.
and
Definitely.
men.
Yeah. I guess it all comes back to the relationship that you have with yourself, and that that aspiring to, improve various aspects of your life, but probably namely the physical attributes, shouldn't be at the expense of all of the inner work. It should be complementary to all the inner work that you're
Yeah, I mean,
doing.
just my bias is that the external is an illusion. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
You will age and then die. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Our hyper focus on our external worlds, the number of cars we have, the clothes we wear, the homes we live in, the way we look is becoming a bit unhealthy. And again, aggrandized by this obsession with social media.
Mm,
The inner life and our connection to our inner worlds and sitting in solitude, in quietude, out in nature, that art is being lost.
mm. Well, your book is incredible, The Parenting Map. Who is the target reader for your book?
I would say young adults who want to be parents, even before they become parents, they should read this book because it's a great sounding off place where the couple can talk about their issues and really hash out how they're going to parent. So it's great for to be parents and, of course, parents, and also for people who want to figure out their childhood and want to
Mm,
heal from their own childhood. It's
wow.
for anyone who's had a parent.
I love that. As I mentioned, I don't, I'm not yet a parent, but I just became an uncle. I aspire to one day be a parent, although I'm nowhere close at the moment. But you never know. Things happen fast. So I'm definitely psyched to now have this as a resource. Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there. So to expect a singular body part to have like this perfectly symmetrical form, it's it's wishful thinking at best.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that porn gets blamed a lot. Like I've seen like doctors will be like, oh, it's because of porn.